Back in 1945, Jack Benny invented the single greatest running gag in radio history, that ridiculous underground money vault guarded by a 150-year-old Civil War watchman, alligator-filled moats, and alarms that sounded like a dying goose. It was pure make-believe, just creaking doors and silly sound effects to feed his cheapest man alive character. But here's the twist nobody knew until decades after he was gone. Jack Benny actually had a real vault, a massive steel one hidden away in a secret location, and he left strict orders that it stay sealed for 50 years after his death. When historians and archivists finally cracked it open in the mid-2020s, they found dusty reels of tape marked in Jack's own handwriting, "Do not open until 2024. They hit play, and there was Jack's unmistakable voice, calm, dry, and a little tired, spilling secrets he never dared tell while he was alive, why he really walked away from a promising violin career, what actually happened during those mysterious, missing, war years, and confessions that could have ended everything he built. This is the real story of the man born Benjamin Kubelski, the kid who was supposed to become the next Paganini but accidentally became the funniest human being on planet Earth. He came into the world on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1894, but the story starts months earlier. His mother, Emma Sachs Kubelski, was tiny, sickly, and fiercely determined. Pregnant in tiny Waukegan, Illinois, she dragged herself onto a train all the way to Chicago just so her son's birth certificate would say, Chicago, instead of some nowhere town. She had already decided this boy was going to be a world-famous violinist. His father Meyer had escaped Polish pogroms, landed on Chicago's streets selling needles and thread from a pushcart, and eventually owned a saloon and a clothing store. Meyer thought show business was for bums and dreamed of his son becoming a respectable businessman. Emma won that argument every single day. By age 3 they were back in Waukegan, living in a little house where little Benjamin could see Lake Michigan from the front window. Emma demanded 2 hours of violin practice daily. He hated it. He'd stare at sailboats instead of the sheet music while his mother pounded the piano and repeated, "You can do it better, better, better." At 6 he got a half-size fiddle for his birthday and started lessons with Professor Harlow for 50 cents a pop. The town went nuts over the kid, people called him a prodigy, raised money to send him to Europe to study with the masters. At 14 he turned it down flat. School? Disaster. He flunked everything, pulled legendary pranks. The worst was smearing Limburger cheese behind the radiator in winter. The stench shut the entire high school down. Expelled freshman year and never went back. While his friends were doing algebra, he was already playing violin in the pit orchestra at the Barrison Theater, soaking up timing and laughs from the performers who drank at his dad's saloon. In 1911 the Marx Brothers rolled through town and Minnie Marx offered the 17-year-old $7.50 a week to tour with her boys. His parents screamed no. That same year he ran off anyway with a 43-year-old pianist widow named Cora Salisbury, who swore to his mother she'd protect him from chorus girls. They toured the Midwest doing 4 shows a day under the name, From Grand Opera to Ragtime. Then the famous violinist Jan Kubelik threatened to sue over the similar name. Terrified, Benjamin became Ben K. Benny. Then bandleader Ben Burney threatened to sue him. Finally, after a dinner with comic Benny Rubin and some Navy buddies who kept calling everybody Jack, the name Jack Benny was born in the early 1920s and it stuck forever. World War I saved him and ruined him at the same time. Drafted at 23, stationed at Great Lakes Naval Training Center, he was supposed to play violin for ceremonies. One night in a camp talent show he started a serious piece and the sailors booed. Future movie star Pat O'Brien yelled, "For God's sake, tell a joke." Jack cracked one line. The place exploded. From that second, the violin became a prop and the comedian was born. He spent the war touring bases with a revue, playing a goofy character named Dizzy, learning that one perfectly timed pause could get more laughs than an hour of perfect music. When the war ended in 1918, vaudeville was dying but Jack came back with a brand new act, a stingy, vain, eternally 39-year-old cheapskate who played the violin terribly on purpose. America was broke, food was still rationed, and people howled because they saw themselves in him. By 1924 he was headlining on Broadway. By 1927 he was pulling $1,500 a week, about $27,000 today, deliberately butchering Tchaikovsky while delivering deadpan sarcasm that left audiences gasping. That same year he married the girl who once froze him out at age 14 during a Passover Seder in Vancouver, Sadie Marks, now radio's Mary Livingstone. On their wedding day in Waukegan, when it was time to break the glass, Mary fainted dead away. Jack sent her one red rose every single day for the next 48 years until the day he died. Radio found him in 1932. His first show tanked because he still tried to play the violin seriously. Ratings flatlined. Then he leaned all the way into being the world's worst musician and the world's cheapest man. Overnight he became the biggest star in America. By 1934 he was making $25,000 a week, over $600,000 today. In 1937 he hired Eddie Rochester Anderson, giving America its first black co-star who wasn't a servant stereotype. Rochester roasted Jack mercilessly and the audience adored it. Southern stations threatened to drop the show. Jack told them to get lost. During World War II he performed for over 3 million troops, flew 32,000 miles with the USO, and donated 10% of his massive salary to war bonds while still cracking jokes about never spending a nickel. And then, on January 7, 1945, the fictional vault was born, creaking chains, blaring alarms, and poor old Ed the guard who'd been down there since the Civil War. It became the most famous running gag in broadcasting history. But the real vault existed. Jack had it built in the 1950s, buried the tapes, and told only his lawyer, 50 years after I'm gone, let them hear the truth. He tried movies and bombed spectacularly. MGM dropped him after 2 flops, Warner Brothers lost almost $1 million on The Horn Blows at Midnight, a comedy released 8 days after FDR died. Jack spent the next 30 years joking that it was the worst film ever made. It became more famous as a punchline than it ever could have as a hit. He got caught in a 1937 jewelry smuggling scandal with a fake Nicaraguan diplomat, paid a $10,000 fine, almost went to prison, then turned the whole thing into radio material. The IRS audited him constantly because he claimed only $19 in entertainment expenses while making millions. He put the auditors on the show and made them part of the act. Television came calling in 1950. At 56 he was terrified he'd look old. His first line on his debut special, "If this doesn't work, I'm going to kill myself." It worked. For 15 years the Jack Benny program ruled Sunday nights, launching Johnny Carson, giving Ronald Reagan one of his last acting gigs, and turning the vault into Cold War satire with flamethrowers and man-eating plants named Irving that he smoked 4 packs of Lucky Strikes a day for decades because they paid him millions to pretend he loved them. In October 1974 he cancelled a show because he felt dizzy. By December they found inoperable pancreatic cancer. He died on December 26, 1974, at age 80, with George Burns, Frank Sinatra, Bob Hope, and Johnny Carson at his bedside. 10,000 people showed up to his funeral. His will revealed a $35 million, today's money, fortune, a Stradivarius violin, and trust funds he'd secretly set up for hundreds of Waukegan kids. The cheapest man in the world had quietly been one of the most generous, and now, 50 years later, in 2025, those sealed tapes are finally being heard. Jack's voice, older, slower, talking straight to the microphone, admitting the violin prodigy story was half myth, confessing things he did during the war that nobody ever knew, explaining why certain years of his life simply vanished from every official biography. The man who taught the world how to laugh at itself left one last performance nobody was allowed to hear until he was long gone. The vault is open, the reels are spinning, and the real Jack Benny is finally telling the jokes he saved for last.